Welcome back to 30-Minute Classified, figure 11 through 20. So, as we journey through the G.I. Joe Classified line, in this expedition, there's going to be some hiccups, and one of the big ones is going to be 16 through 20, which of course is the Ollie's Bargain Discount Basement 5. The ones that came to $4.99 at Ollie's, and they still couldn't get rid of them. And in places, you can actually still find these on the discount racks, such as Walmart, even years after their release. These were the least popular. And my sentiments about the movie and these figures are mostly going to be what the community's sentiments are, because I did a lot of research on how people responded to these, what they liked and what they didn't. So in this, I'm sort of echoing those sentiments. My personal feeling is that there were some good ones, but this was a big misstep by Hasbro, as they don't fit into the line at all. They're made of a different plastic, they're in a slightly different scale, and even the peg holes in their feet are different than the rest of the classified line. So these don't really fit in with everything else, and they don't even look really that great next to the rest of your figures. Now, there are a few that I actually did like, and that I think can be used for army building and whatnot, but overall, these aren't really classified. They're just movie figures that Hasbro tried to shove into the line in the numeric progression to get you to buy them. And they did get a lot of people to buy them at $4.99. But a lot of people also sat this one out. Now, like the rest of this series, mostly what we're going to be doing is going through every single figure and their skill badges, as well as their first release of this costume, their specific costume, in the comic books, TV shows, and other media, and how the figure came about. But with these, I'll be doing something a little bit different, which is more looking into what succeeded and what didn't succeed in the movie itself. Now, the elephant in the room right now, and this is going to date this episode, is probably the Haslab that's not funding. And I have a lot of feelings about that. I'm not going to go into all of them here. What I will say is that I think a good deal of the reason it's not funding is it's a big blocky vehicle with a missile rack on top. Meaning Balaburst just did this. Ramen just did this. I think Mezco is actually doing this right now. And all in all, it ends up looking like a little knockoff kid's toy moon rover vehicle, rather than a really well done G.I. Joe vehicle. I think deciding to box up the missiles on the side was a mistake. The missiles should have been much bigger with the skis on them. I think there should have been a bunch more armaments, similar to what the Hiss tank did. And I think that it's just sort of blocky and uninteresting. And though it would be cool to grab, and definitely something that I would grab if it was hitting the normal shelves, and I will probably fund it if it does end up funding, just so I don't have figures missing. But overall, this is not a dream project. I don't think for anyone. As a matter of fact, I really think that the tank, either of the tanks, would have done well. I think that the Mauler would have done exceptionally well. And releasing this one, I think, was a huge mistake, and I think we will see if it actually ends up even funding. But I really hope this doesn't hurt the line overall. And I think the Phalanx, which is fairly expensive from Gridiron Studios, is really the belle of the ball right now, and what a lot of people in the community are talking about. And Hasbro sort of leaned pretty heavily on the aspect that some of us like to photograph these things, turning it almost into Barbie diorama rather than a big, huge war scene. A lot of the people photographing these things, some of them are fun, some of them are people fishing and whatnot, but for the most part what they're photographing is people dodging behind walls and shooting back. This thing has a water cooler and ice and places to cook your hot dogs, and maybe those would be really great as sort of like a Hasbro Pulse exclusive accessory set. I don't really think that they are exactly what the body of the collector base really wants as a tier. And so, even though the tent is kind of cool and all of that, the thing at least needed to have the missile rack able to be on top with troops inside. As if you have to exchange one for the other, it really doesn't do duty on either. But I have a lot more to say about that, and what my thoughts are about what they could have done, what they should do, and what they should do going forward. I'll probably do that in another episode. But for now, let's look at the rest of G.I. Joe Classified, number 11 through 20, starting with 11. Classified, Episode 11, Roadblock. Roadblock first appeared alongside Duke in issue 22 of Marvel Comics' G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and then having a few main releases in the original 80s G.I. Joe toy line, as well as being in the second Sunbow miniseries and the G.I. Joe main animated TV series. This episode I won't be reading his file card, largely because we went over that in the 01 release. Roadblock 11 was part of the Target exclusive Cobra Island run of the Classified series, and doesn't really resemble any of the previous releases of the figures, 80s, 90s, or otherwise. This one coming with a brand new head sculpt, sporting a communications earpiece, a more full beard, a do-rag, and a set of removable sunglasses. Though the upper torso is painted to look like a black techno-camouflage tank top, the body is primarily the same as was used in the 01 release. The main difference being the leg strap grenade holder and the forearm gauntlet with armor and what looks like a small computer device. He doesn't have the knife that came with the original, or the vest, but does come with the exact same railgun, although somewhat repainted. The reinvention of the character so shortly after the original, and the weapon accessories being the same, caused this one to be a bit of a peg warmer, where other Cobra Island figures were going for hundreds on eBay. But this would definitely not be the last release of this figure, with Hasbro refining the design with Classified 28, a much more comic and cartoon accurate costumed heavy artillery Roadblock packaged with a giant minigun, and finally the Tiger Force Roadblock and Tripwire 2-pack, which is the first to come with his modified M2 Browning and tripod, which gives him the second most character releases in the Classified line after Snake Eyes, and I have no doubt that this character will also likely be featured in the retro cardback line at some point in the near future. Though there would be some incredibly sought after figures through the Classified teens, this Roadblock would definitely not be the biggest misstep Hasbro would take before reaching Classified 21, but more on that as we reach Classified 16. As for Roadblock, he has always been a fan favorite. Roadblock would see 5 total releases, including his field variant Redeco, but Classified 11 stands as the most unique version of this character, and probably would have been better received if he didn't come with a railgun that had already been packaged with the figure twice, but instead something along the lines of an M2 or L7A221 GPMG. Overall, this is a cool figure, and because he doesn't come with a large vest, you get greater access to his articulation, allowing for a good deal more variation in his posability. He would be numerically the second Cobra Island release after Beachhead. Now for decoding his skill badges. Roll, Vanguard, level 4. Gear, Heavy Weapons, level 3. Skill, Strength, level 4. Mastery, Artillery, level 4. Classified, Episode 12, Cobra Trooper, first appearing in issue number 1 of Marvel Comics' G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, as well as being one of the first figures released with the original 1982 Hasbro line, and of course appearing in the very first Sunbow miniseries. The Cobra Trooper has been a popular part of the G.I. Joe world from the very beginning, and Classified number 12 is no exception. Part of the Target exclusive Cobra Island run, the Cobra Trooper would quickly become a sought-after army builder and sell out through Target and Hasbro Pulse, causing fans to flock to eBay to pay exorbitant prices for the highly sought-after figure. But eventually, with the release of several other Cobra infantry figures, as well as the release of this figure in the retro cardback line, prices would finally begin to fall, with the average price for one now selling somewhere between $40 and $60. And it's not hard to see why this one would be so popular. With a teched-out laser sniper rifle, 2 pistols, a removable knife, a removable set of sci-fi goggles, a removable helmet and armband, as well as a very Aliens Pulse Rifle-inspired laser rifle, the Cobra Trooper would sport an impressive loadout with awesome paint applications and ample articulation, as well as the ability to be displayed with all of his accessories stowed on him, thanks to pegs on his rifles as well as multiple peg holes on his back. In short, this figure really showed where the line could go, serving both a new audience while still paying tribute to what had come before. The original Cobra Trooper's file card read, Cobra, codename, the enemy, file name, unknown. Primary military specialty, infantry. Secondary military specialty, sabotage. Birthplace, various countries, grade E4 or equivalent. One of the nameless faceless legions of Cobra Command, each Cobra is highly skilled in the use of explosives, all NATO and Warsaw Pact small arms, sabotage, and the martial arts. Qualified expert, Scorpion, VZO, R61 machine pistol, Dragunov SVD sniper rifle, Uzi submachine gun, and M16. Notable quote about them: Cobras swear absolute loyalty to their fanatical leader, Cobra Commander. Their goal? To conquer the world for their own evil purpose. One of my favorite figures from the early Classified line, the Cobra Trooper, is the beginning of what G.I. Joe Classified would eventually become, a way for adults to collect and relive their experience with the original line. Even the updated 6-inch size, being twice as large as the originals, feels familiar in hand, because most of us collectors have hands that are twice as big as when we first plucked these off the shelves at our favorite toy stores. Now for decoding his skill badges. Roll. Foot Soldier, Level 1. Gear, Light Weapons, Level 1. Skill, Hand-to-Hand Combat, Level 1. Mastery, Sabotage, Level 1. Classified Episode 13, Baroness, with the Cobra C.O.I.L, first appearing in Marvel's G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, Issue 1 in 1982, and the Sunbow miniseries the next year. Baroness wouldn't see a release in the toy line until Series 3 in 1984, but she would go on to become one of, if not the most popular female villain in action figure and cartoon history, and achieving near-cult pinup status in the comic book and cosplay world. Not only was the Classified release a striking version of the figure, it marks the first vehicle in the entire line. Little did anyone know when this one was released that we would eventually be getting vehicles that were several feet across, not just from Hasbro but third-party companies as well. But this one would be somewhat unique in that it was the only vehicle in the line that doesn't have a 1/18th scale counterpart, though the name is a callback to the Cobra C.O.I.Ls, which were part of Cobra's elite motorcycle drivers. No one seems to know what the Hasbro team meant by the C.O.I.L anagram. The figure comes with 2 gold pistols, a gold-handled Cobra knife, an interesting Cobra-shaped laser blaster, an extra helmeted head, and 2 rifles that can be pegged into the side of the bike. The peg holes on the bike are the same size as back peg holes, so they can fit any accessory that fits the back. And of course the Akira bike itself. C.O.I.L. The Baroness would be released again with more cartoon-accurate glasses and the Cobra Trooper's accessories in the retro cardback line, then in a red outfit as part of the Pulse 3-pack exclusive, and finally a flight suit version packaged with the Haslab Cobra Rattler. But at this time, the Classified line still hasn't seen her in her classic blue and gold outfit. Her original file card reads, Cobra, Intelligence Officer, Codename, Baroness, Primary Military Specialty, Intelligence, Secondary Military Specialty, Fixed-Wing Pilot, Birthplace, Classified. The spoiled offspring of wealthy European aristocrats, the Baroness graduated from student radicalism into international terrorism, and finally into the ranks of Cobra. She was severely burned during a Cobra night attack operation, and has had extensive plastic surgery. Rumor has it that she's the only one who knows Destro's secret identity. Qualified expert, M16, AK-47, RPG-7, Uzi, HISS tank operator. Notable quote about her: her principal weakness is in the division of her loyalty between Cobra Commander and Destro. Her chief strength would seem to lie in her ability to play them against each other. Though the fans would have a love-hate relationship with the motorcycle, it did pave the way towards incredible 1/12 scale vehicles we are seeing today. And honestly, seeing this giant box on the shelf really started to turn heads towards the Classified line. Now for decoding her skill badges. Roll, Intelligence, Level 4. Gear, Light Weapons, Level 1. Skill, Psyops, Level 3. Mastery. Disguise, Level 4. Classified, Episode 14, Arctic Mission Storm Shadow. This one being based on his Ninja Force appearance, Storm Shadow would first don this costume in issue 119 of Marvel Comics' G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and then the outfit would grace the toy and cartoon market in 1992, during the Deke run of the G.I. Joe animated series. The funny thing about this is that this is at a time in the story when Storm Shadow was part of the G.I. Joe crew, so though this one was definitely based on the Storm Shadow version 3, the packaging here tells that he has maintained his Cobra allegiance. Arctic Mission Storm Shadow comes with a bow, a quiver full of gold arrows and an inexplicably white arrow, a grappling claw with a rope, a katana and sheath, and a single white comma. And this one, like so many others in the early line, suffered from an oversaturation of knockoff products. 3 ways that most people have been able to tell whether theirs is a knockoff or not is the hole in the sheath. If it's punched very deep, you have an original, but if it's sort of shallow, it's more likely it's a knockoff. The quiver and the arrows are a little bit smaller and have sloppier paint on the knockoff, and the cord around the grappling claw is more haphazardly wrapped. And lastly, his waist and chest are extremely loose, causing the figure to lean forward or backward when standing straight. As for his file card, I'm going to read the one that came with the Ninja Force version, and we'll probably read his version 1 and version 2 file cards with those releases in the classified line. Codename: Storm Shadow, Ninja Force Leader. File name: Arashikage Thomas S. SN 3928793NJ11. Primary military specialty: covert operations. Secondary military specialty: martial arts. Birthplace: St. Louis, Missouri. Grade E8. First Sergeant. Quote: train hard, fight easy. Storm Shadow is a former U.S. Army LRRP, former Cobra Viper, first Grandmaster Arashikage Ninja Clan, sword brother to the inscrutable Snake Eyes, and now the leader of the newly formed G.I. Joe Ninja Force. Drawing from generations of secret lore and years of practical combat experience, Storm Shadow imparts to his ninja force such esoteric techniques as the Cloak and Chameleon and Screaming Whirlwind. When he's on patrol, Storm Shadow operates the lethal G.I. Joe Patriot, long-range recon patrol. Weapons: quick flick shoulder throwing stars, 2 intense concussion grenades, smoke bomb for fast escape, chest-mounted commando stiletto, fast grab battle double-edged sickle, leg-mounted combat bayonet, nunchuck defense weapon, stainless steel ninja master sword, specialized chameleon camouflage battle uniform. Now for decoding his skill badges. Role: Covert Ops Level 4. Gear: Bladed Weapons Level 3. Skill: Infiltration Level 3. Mastery: Ninjutsu Level 4. Classified Episode 15, Prophet Director Destro. Becoming almost an urban legend, Prophet Director Destro, or PDD, coined Pimp Daddy Destro by the fans, didn't appear in any comics or any other media until after a planned relaunch of the G.I. Joe toy line in 1994 ran into a few stumbling blocks. Part of a proposed Cobra Commander, Baroness, and Destro 3-pack featuring the original molds of all three, Hasbro's product development team would quickly find out that their Chinese manufacturers had destroyed or mishandled many of their original product molds, the original Cobra Commander and Destro being chief among them. Late in development, this setback pushed Hasbro to change the Cobra Commander into the 1987 armored version and to use the 1992 version 3 Destro mold. While in development, Hasbro developer John Boyce sent prototypes to the paint and modeling department, where Stephen Messo, one of Hasbro's chief painters, would send back an over-the-top paint scheme, largely as a joke, but evidently instead of finding it ridiculous, John really liked it and decided to move forward with the leopard print and maroon color scheme. The project was greenlit, but shortly after, higher-ups at Hasbro would get cold feet and request the costume be toned down, mainly replacing the leopard print with flat black. But a small number of these were accidentally released into the wild. Some were uncarded versions that were leaked from the factory in China, but there were around 100 that were packaged and sent to US toy retailers, making it an extremely rare and often knocked off collectible. Fast forward to 2007, Hasbro released a convention-exclusive version of this concept for the 25-year anniversary of the G.I. Joe 3 3/4 line. His 25th anniversary file card read: Weapons Supplier, Codename Destro, File Name James McMullen, Primary Military Specialty Intelligence, Birthplace Callander, Scotland, Destro, the 17th Lord of the Manor House in the Scotland Highlands, and the current head of a centuries-old arms manufacturing firm. Tradition holds that the current head of the firm always wear a polished beryllium steel mask when in public. His predecessors supplied weapons and aircraft to the British in World War II. His father supplied arms to Southeast Asia. The current Destro has more ambitions, running his own organization known as the Iron Grenadier Troopers before becoming the arms supplier for Cobra, although Destro personally despises Cobra Commander, believing him to be a pompous, posturing platoon. He knows that working with Cobra is good for business. From the personal journal of Destro: as long as the world exists, there will always be conflict. Technology advances best during strife and battle, and there are always those who will take advantage of them. Better it should be someone with honor. Role: Mechanical Engineering Level 4. Gear: Light Weapons Level 1. Skill: Black Market Deals Level 3. Mastery: Weapons Development Level 4. Classified, Episode 16, Snake Eyes, first appearing in a live-action film in G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra in 2009 and G.I. Joe Retaliation in 2013, played by Scottish actor Ray Park of Darth Maul fame in both. Snake Eyes would go on to get his own film in 2021, now played by British-Japanese actor Henry Golding. The Snake Eyes film would almost completely ignore the two G.I. Joe movies that had come before, in favor of a franchise reboot. The film would receive abysmal critical reviews and a lukewarm response from audiences, resulting in Hasbro scrapping any further G.I. Joe film projects related to this one. And due to the fact that the story changed several key elements of Snake Eyes' origin, fans of the G.I. Joe brand would also largely reject this entry. And not just the film, but also the movie tie-in figures Hasbro would try to shoehorn into the classified line. Not even completely in the same scale as previous classified releases, classified 16 through 20 would be the lowest performing figures of the entire line, showing up at Ollie's Bargain Outlet store for $4.99 a piece. And at $4.99, these aren't actually terrible figures. The weapons are cool, the sculpts are well done, and the paint applications are about as good as anything else in the line. The issue with these sales stems from the fact that these don't at all feel at home with the rest of the classified figures. Like I mentioned before, they are in a slightly smaller and thinner scale. They aren't outfitted with that many accessories, and they are representations of characters in a film that a good deal of the fans would like to forget ever happened. And even though these characters are supposed to be from much earlier in their proposed canon, they inexplicably gave them the exact same skill badges as their previous releases. So in the end, this comes out like a boring and lazy way of getting a movie tie-in sold that wouldn't otherwise stand on its own. Snake Eyes comes with a katana, a sheath, an extra unmasked head sculpt, and of course his classic butterfly-style swords that used to be sculpted into the chest of his 1989 version 3 costume. Again, as mentioned before, even though these feel slightly different in hand than the rest of the classified line, they are not entirely terrible figures, especially for customizers, and the fact that they could all be had for the price of one regular classified figure made them sort of a no-brainer for most collectors to pick them up in order to complete their numeric progression through the collection. The most unforgivable aspect of the lineup is that they didn't give us an Iko Uwais figure. As for the Snake Eyes film itself, it had some well-choreographed action sequences, but failed to live up to the sort of John Wick aesthetic of the trailer, and messed with too many of the established plot points in the original canon. Thus will most likely be completely forgotten when and if G.I. Joe is again rebooted for live action. Now for decoding his skill badges. Roll, Covert Ops Level 4. Gear, Bladed Weapons Level 4. Skill, Stealth Level 4. Mastery, Ninjutsu Level 4. Classified, Episode 17, Storm Shadow, first live-action appearance in G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra in 2009, and then G.I. Joe Retaliation in 2013, played by South Korean actor Lee Pyung-hun, of Squid Game's I Saw the Devil and The Good, the Bad, and the Weird fame, as well as many others, then played in Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins by British-Japanese actor and martial artist Andrew Koji, most known for his role in the TV show Warrior, as well as an appearance in the film Bullet Train, and Fast and the Furious 6. And more recently, Boy Kills World. Packaging for these Snake Eyes film figures would not have terribly much variation, with the back image for the good guys being the Snake Eyes symbol in white and in black for the bad guys. Another bargain discount basement darling, this version of Storm Shadow would come with two identical katana and a backpack holder, but unfortunately not two full scabbards, like was seen in the film, which struck me as really cheap, as two full sword sheaths that clip onto the back would have been an awesome accessory. His only other accessory is an extra unmasked portrait, which is a fair likeness of the actor, if not a little exaggerated. The plastic on this figure feels very different than the standard classified series material, in that the joints feel very breakable. In order to get him into any pose at all, I had to heat him up, as the dog bone pins didn't want to turn in the socket but rather twist in the middle of the pin itself. Aesthetically, back sword holder aside, it's a very well sculpted ninja figure, and at $4.99, these were great for collectors to pick up and customize into Ninja Army builders. Inexplicably, the design decided to go with a much darker cream color than the sort of eggshell off-white that was seen in the film, but there are some sculpt details that I really appreciate, such as the slight outlining of the mouth underneath the ninja mask. And though the figures are not terrible in sculpted detail, they do represent the lowest point of engagement in the entire line. with many collectors simply skipping these, allowing a 5-figure block to be absent in their numeric progression through the series. And when you give fans something they so easily opt out of, it stops the Pokemon-style completist mentality of a lot of collectors dead in their tracks. The out-of-place movie figure became a sort of meme in the community, with jokes regarding disappointed collectors getting these as Christmas gifts. And it would most likely be the stash of cold water in the face that would cause Hasbro's creatives to really start re-strategizing and eventually pushing out more progressively ambitious projects over the next couple years. So who knows, maybe these 5 figures were a wake-up call that saved the entire line. Again, his skill badges are identical to his previous Arctic release, even going so far as to having the Cobra element in them, even though chronologically he was not yet part of Cobra in the film. Now for decoding his skill badges. Roll, Covert Ops, level 4. Gear, Bladed Weapons, level 3. Skill, Infiltration, level 3. Mastery, Ninjutsu, level 4. Classified, Episode 18, Akiko. Not a part of the G.I. Joe universe, live action or otherwise, until Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins, Akiko would be an original character played by Japanese actress Haruka Abe. Though appearing in bit parts in films like Cruella and 47 Ronin, the Snake Eyes origin movie is probably the most notable high-profile role she's taken. Though I like this figure, the likeness definitely has much harsher makeup than was seen in the film, making the character look a little less subtle. She comes with a double-bladed staff, and akimbo versions of that staff, as the weapon pulls apart and becomes 2 swords in the film. Because she's unique and surprisingly posable, this may be my favorite figure in the Snake Eyes Origins lineup. Though none of the female figures would have the double-jointed elbows the line is somewhat famous for, this one still did allow for a considerable amount of personality when posing. Being a completely original character, Akiko will probably not be included anywhere else in this line, and honestly in the film, she was almost a completely forgettable character as well. Snake Eyes Origin did what a lot of modern films are guilty of, in that they spent a good deal of the story trying to deconstruct the source material, hoping to wow us with their ability to subvert our expectations in the most obvious way possible. The hero is really a flawed character, and the villain is actually a victim. The film is watchable, but destroys a lot of what made Larry Hama's Snake Eyes so compelling. Gone is just about every story beat regarding Snake Eyes being taken into the Arashikage clan when he was young, him taking a vow of silence, or even being burned for that matter, and he doesn't even don the classic Snake Eyes helmet until the very end of the film. The storytelling was too simple to be aimed squarely at adults, and too convoluted to appeal to children. Thus, it fell flat on its face and more than likely harmed a few careers in the process. But as far as small and slight Japanese female martial arts toys go, this one is actually fairly well crafted, and I'm surprised she didn't do better amongst the figure modding community. In fact, every once in a while, these still pop up in Walmart deep discount aisles, in stores at the fringes of society. So in the end, Akiko is really the only unique thing to come out of Hasbro's attempt at getting the community to buy toys from a failed movie endeavor. She is an original character and an original design, and would look nice and at home amongst your Ninja Force displays. So again, not a terrible figure, just ill-suited for this particular line. On a side note, it's actually really lazy that Hasbro didn't decide to make a different skill icon set for these, as only Scarlett and Baroness are members of Cobra and G.I. Joe. Snake Eyes, Storm Shadow, and Akiko should have had Arashikage-specific skill badges, but I think that's too much to ask for something they were already trying to force fit. Now, for decoding the skill badges. Roll, Security, level 4. Gear, Melee Weapons, level 3. Skill, Stealth, level 4. Mastery, Ninjutsu, level 4. Classified, Episode 19, Baroness. First live-action appearance in 2009's G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra, played by Sienna Miller, who would really set the tone for live-action versions of this character, but would not return for G.I. Joe Retaliation. Her second big-screen iteration in Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins would be played by relative newcomer Ursula Corbero, most known for her recent TV series The Day of the Jackal. Snake Eyes would see Baroness sporting a more rebellious Hot Topic goth look with a late 90s, early 2000s haircut. The figure itself comes with 2 Gurkha knives, a removable pair of glasses, and an MP5 with detachable silencer and magazine. The figure itself is cool, but as you can tell right here next to the previous Baroness release, she is not quite in the same scale and manufacturing style as the original, and even the paint applications feel different. And this is where I knew these particular figures were going to be the most difficult to present in the entire line. To this point, and really for the rest of the line, I have a very specific formula of showing their first comic book appearance and their toy and cartoon appearance, followed by some highlights about the figure and their respective file cards. But here we have something completely outside the rest of the line, down to the storytelling. The Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins film did so poorly at the box office that it's unlikely any further storylines will follow any of the suggested story beats from that outing, and so these really aren't part of anything other than a one-off story that will be decanonized in the next outing. As far as the Baroness goes, I like the knife holders at the small of her back, and the MP5 is a really solid accessory, especially with the removable silencer, so overall this is not a horrible figure, even if it doesn't really mean anything to the rest of the classified line. And of course the Baroness is a popular character whose other classified releases are just different colorations of the same costume and mold, except for the Haslab version that is, so it's unique in that respect as well. I will say that the costume is pretty film accurate on all fronts except the gloves that are supposed to be fingerless. The sculpt appears to be there, but they didn't bother to paint the ends of her fingers any flesh tones. Another thing to note is that the peg hole on all of these is different than any other classified figure. As a matter of fact, you have to modify most stands in order to fit them. As for the skill badges, they again use the exact same badges and skill levels as seen in the motorcycle release. Since this is supposed to be a much younger version of her, it would have been more interesting if she wasn't as high a level on some of these, possibly level 1 or level 2 on most. But also Hasbro has never really given much support to this premise, so I'm betting any idea of different levels of development in their careers was never anywhere in the purview of the line overall. We are probably lucky to even still be getting the skill badges on more recent releases. As for decoding her badges, Roll, Intelligence, level 4, Gear, Weapons, level 1, Skill, Psyops, level 3, Mastery, Disguise, level 4. Classified, Episode 20, Scarlett. First live-action appearance being in 2009's G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, played by Rachel Nichols. Not appearing in the second film, Scarlett would not be seen again in live action until 2021's Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins, played by rising Australian star Samara Weaving, of Ready or Not and The Babysitter fame, amongst many others. Other than having a fairly good likeness of the actress, I would say that this is hands down the weakest figure in the Snake Eyes movie lineup. She only comes with one very small crossbow accessory, she's not terribly well articulated, and her paint applications are sort of dull, and really the character herself felt really shoehorned into the film, mainly there to give the project more weight towards the G.I. Joe franchise overall. And that's too bad, because I actually did like the casting of Samara Weaving. But fortunately, after this figure, I don't think we'll have to talk about G.I. Joe live-action movies in the classified figures line ever again. And honestly, that's good, as there's not a whole heck of a lot to say about this figure. It looks like the film production crew was taking a lot of their cues from the Operation Blackout video game design, rather than Scarlett's classic look, and really the best Scarlett figure in the entire line is the retro cardback release, which unlike most other retro cardback figures was not simply a repaint of the previous figure, but rather an all-new version. And honestly, though the Snake Eyes Bargain Discount 5 were a huge misstep, Hasbro did learn from this mistake, driving the series deeper into nostalgia, courting the original collector base over trying to reinvent the wheel. Yes, from here on out, there are some original characters and a few nods to the later comic book series, but overall the aesthetic and attention to detail are very much recapturing the imagination of the original line. And really, from figure 22 on, that's exactly what Hasbro would do, constantly refining and distilling the series down to something worthy of collectors taking extended breaks so that they can watch the new release and spam the Hasbro website refresh button until popular figures would drop and then sell out in 3 minutes. So in the end, I'm glad they got this experiment out of their system. Now the Hasbro team knows exactly who their core demographic is and how to cater to those fans. Though there would be other controversies such as windowless zero plastic packaging and droopy gummy weapons, the company would not again do anything as stupid as trying to force fit movie tie-in merchandise into their flagship collectibles line. But as we close down the Snake Eyes movie figures, the best is yet to come. I hope you'll join me as we look through classified 21 through 30 and beyond. Now let's take a look at Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins Scarlett skill badges. Roll, Intelligence level 4, Gear Arrow Weapons level 2, Skill Martial Arts level 3, Mastery Classified Level 4. Now that we've looked at the entire 11 through 20, I am hoping that you'll join me again as we look through 21 through 30 and so on. Plan is to get through every single figure that's been released in this same format with every single one, so that you have a checklist and you can go and look and see which figures have been out, see several different poses of those figures, and sort of the history of the figure. And right now, the channel really could use your help. So if you're a part of the G.I. Joe community and you really like these, you want to see them keep going, please share them as much as possible. And let's see if we can make this a full visual checklist for the entire series. But as always, thanks for watching, and remember, never stop collecting.